Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and I'm back with another knitting update video. So in this video I'll be sharing all of the projects that I've been working on recently and maybe talking a little bit about some projects that I'm looking forward to working on in the future. I thought because it's been a while since my last video that maybe I would start with a little life update before I get to the knitting update. So I graduated from my university program, so I now have my bachelor's degree, which is very exciting. And you may have noticed I'm in a different filming location and I have this beautiful lamp. This is one of my favorite graduation gifts that I received. This is really beautiful handcrafted wooden lamp that I love, so I thought it would be nice and cozy for being in my video. Yeah, so I graduated from my university program and then I went on this really lovely trip with some of my closest friends from school in a few different countries across Europe, which was really amazing. And then as soon as I got back from that trip, I started working. The day after I landed was my first day at my new job. So yeah, very quick turnaround. Had my graduation ceremony. I was working multiple jobs over the summer, so I was working a lot of hours. It was very, very busy. And then at the end of the summer, I started a new job. And so, yeah, I've just been kind of working lots and figuring things out. So it's been a busy time. I haven't had too much time for knitting. I have definitely had I'm looking at all the things in front of me and clearly I've had enough knitting time because I have been working on quite a few different things. But I guess maybe just less knitting time than I was used to before graduating. So that is a little update on where I've been for the last few months. And I'm really excited to be back with another video. And so I think that this new filming setup will be nice because I've got this table in front of me. So I have all of my knitting kind of laid out in front of me in a way that I hope will make it easy for me to kind of pull things and talk about each of them. So anyway, let's get into it and I will start by sharing some sock knitting that I've been working on because sock knitting is one of the things that I was talking quite a bit about in my last video. I really wanted to get into sock knitting and I have kind of done that. So let me show you some of the socks that I've been working on. The very first pair of socks that I ever knit was the Rye Light sock by Tin Can Knits. So I knit another pair of Rye Light socks and I knit these ones for my partner with a slightly more masculine colorway than my first pair of socks, in my opinion. And so here is the yarn that I used. This is the Superwash Merino sock yarn in the color Ursa, or the colorway Ursa. And I knit, like I said already, I knit the Rye Light sock by Tin Can Knits. Here they are. I think that they turned out really great. I like this pattern. I think it's interesting. It's a very beginner-friendly pattern, and I think it was a really great pattern to start with for my first couple pairs of socks. It is very basic in terms of its construction and the elements used. The whole top of the sock is knit in garter stitch, and then the rest of the sock is in stockinette. So it's just a little design detail that I think elevates these socks a little bit, even though they're still super, super basic and easy in terms of their overall construction. So they've got a ribbed cuff, 1x1 rib, and then yeah, just stockinette and a little bit of garter stitch. And then in the pattern they've got a heel flap and gusset construction for the heel, so that's the first heel that I tried knitting, and then a pretty basic toe. One thing I did notice with this yarn, and I think it's just that this is a merino wool yarn, is that I've had quite a bit of felting on the bottom of the sock. I think a more rustic wool would probably be able to withstand the wear of socks a little bit better than such a soft merino wool, which makes sense. But when I picked the yarn for this sock, I was just thinking the merino is so soft and it would feel so nice on your feet, but I guess I wasn't thinking so much about how they would wear. So I know that now. But yeah, the felting isn't terrible, but I think I maybe expected that a pair of hand knit socks would hold up a lot better. They got felted like this within their first wear, which is really fast, I think. Yeah, I don't know how these will kind of wear over time, but hopefully the felting doesn't get too bad, or maybe they'll just get completely felted on the bottom, and I guess that's fine as long as the top and the rest of the sock still looks fine, but the heels are getting worn, and so like I was thinking, you know, if they're felted on the bottom, the bottoms of your feet are on the ground anyway, so nobody's gonna see that, but your heel isn't. So the felting on your heel, you'll be able to see if you're walking around without shoes on. So that's really not ideal. I don't love the felting that's been going on with these socks. So I think the lesson learned maybe is to try knitting with slightly more rustic wool yarn instead of such a soft merino wool. So yeah, anyway, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say about these socks. I do really like how they turned out. The color is a little crazy, I'm not gonna lie. Like they're very, well, maybe the color itself isn't crazy, they're just neutrals, but the striping, or whatever you'd call this, is a little bit intense. But my partner likes them, so I'm happy. I'm happy with how they turned out. Yeah, okay, so that was the second pair of socks that I ever knit, and then the third pair of socks that I tried, I made with a yarn that I was given for Christmas by my mom, and you would have seen this yarn already in a previous video, but this is the Fibrelya sock yarn in the colorway Mirage Daisy. So it's this really interesting blend of red, pink, purple, and this light gray. It is a self-striping yarn, so I was really excited to see how the stripes would turn out, because it's really hard to tell what a sock is going to look like based on what the yarn looks like in the ball, because you really can't tell how thick those stripes are going to be and in what order they'll come. So yeah, I was really looking forward to seeing this sock work up. And I knit this yarn into a pair of Midnight Dancer socks by Sari Nordlund. Here they are. These are a little crazy. They are a little bit crazy. The colors are really bright and they're very stripy, which isn't something that I would usually wear, but they were so much fun to knit. And I knit them in a pattern with some frills at the top, which I was really excited about. I really wanted a pair of frilly socks, so I'm happy to have a pair of frilly socks. And this yarn is a little bit more rustic than the merino, the superwash merino that I used for my Rhyolite socks, so they are holding up a lot better to wearing. I don't think there's any felting on these socks as of right now, and I've worn them quite a few times out in my boots. I guess there is a little bit of felting, but nothing like what's been going on with the merino wool socks. So yeah, super happy with these. This pattern taught me a couple things. One, I actually don't enjoy the experience of knitting ruffles or frills. I didn't know how this was achieved. I didn't know how one could create ruffles. It's pretty obvious now that I know. It's just like a ton of stitches, and so you create a lot of fabric and then decrease quickly so that they bunch together. That's very intuitive, but I hadn't actually, processed or thought about what that knitting experience would be like. So I had to cast on so many stitches at the start of these socks, and knitting that many stitches in a very lightweight yarn just takes a lot of time. So knitting the frills took so long, and it was just challenging, I guess, to get through that stage and keep the momentum for the rest of the sock. But I really loved the way that they turned out. I also tried a new heel construction. I can't remember what this heel construction is called, but it's done with short rows, I want to say. This is definitely a very different heel than the one that I created with the heel flapping gusset method. It's a much more dainty heel, which I like. And it was fun trying the short row technique. And the toe is pretty much identical, I think, to... No, it's not identical. I think maybe the only difference was the knit two together and the slip knit were flipped on this pattern. But otherwise pretty much the same. So yeah, those are the Midnight Dancer socks. And I am really glad that I didn't go with the Midsummer Dancer sock pattern, because the Midsummer Dancer socks have eyelets, which are so beautiful. I really want to knit that pattern, but not with this yarn, because I think it would have been way too busy having the stripes and also the eyelets. So I'm glad that I went with a really plain overall kind of textural design on these socks so that the stripes would shine. And I think I'll try doing the Midsummer Dancer sock with a different yarn, one that's just one solid color. The other thing that I guess I should talk about with these socks is the self-striping and how it lines up between each sock. So like I said, this is a yarn where you kind of start knitting each sock in the same place on the yarn, so you should have identical stripes throughout. And as I hold them next to each other like this, you can see how the stripes line up. So I think that it worked pretty well, especially given that at the time that I'd knit these socks, this was the third pair of socks I'd ever knit. The first time I knit a different sock pattern than the Rhyolite sock, so I think there was a risk of my socks not being super even, but the color striping worked out pretty well, and they are fairly close to being identical. They're not quite exactly identical. I can see a couple differences between them, but I don't know if that's me or the way that the yarn was dyed. But yeah, they turned out pretty well. The heel part was a little tricky for me because I didn't knit a contrasting heel or toe. I knit the whole sock in this yarn. So with the striping, as I got to the heel section, you're knitting more stitches into the heel, and so you use up more yarn in the heel compared to what you use in the calf part or the foot part. So I ended up with really, really skinny stripes around the heel, but I don't mind it. I think it's fine. It's just something to keep in mind, I guess, next time I knit socks. But if I did a contrasting heel, then I would be using less yarn than I do in the other parts of the sock. And so I'd actually end up with wider stripes around the heel. So I think either way, you could probably compensate for that. But anyway, it was just an interesting thing that I came across as I was knitting these. But overall, don't mind that at all. And I like how the socks turned out. So yes, those are my Midnight Dancer socks. After knitting these, I chose yet another sock pattern to try knitting. And the next pair of socks, they are colorwork socks, which is exciting. So after knitting these, I came across the Forget Me Not sock pattern by Stone Knits. And I've been working on those. And when I say I've been working on those, it has been months since I've actually touched these. I started knitting them in August or September, I want to say, and I was knitting like crazy for September. So I got one sock done and I started the second sock, but then I think I made a mistake on the heel and I had to rip it out and start again, but wasn't excited about doing that. So and then I think things got pretty busy with work and I just didn't have as much time to be working on them, so they got set aside and I haven't really gotten back to them yet. But I love these socks. I think this pattern is gorgeous. It is a 3-color work pattern. So you have the base color, and I chose white for mine. And then you've got the blue and yellow for the little forget-me-not flowers, which are really pretty. You can see the jog in the pattern here, but if I turn it like this, that's the front. And I really love all of the details, all the colorwork details on this sock. And the other detail that I really love is this picot edge. I love a picot edge. I think it's so pretty, and it was really fun learning how this is constructed. I didn't understand how before getting the pattern. So here I show you this sock that is still in progress. You can see maybe how this kind of comes together. So it's just yarn overs, and then you would fold this down to create that picot edge. So on this second sock, I haven't folded that down and sewn it in yet, but it will turn into a really beautiful picot edge. I love that detail. So as you can see, I'm knitting these with double pointed needles, and I didn't realize how much people hate double pointed needles, but every time I go into the yarn store to buy double pointed needles, they're like, you know, other things exist, right? You don't have to knit with those. But I was, my mom knit socks with double pointed needles, and I really don't like magic loop, so I was just knitting with double pointed needles. But I think that my tension could be a lot better if I used a different method, maybe. This second sock isn't too bad for tension wise, but I think the first sock is kind of, especially at the top, my tension in the colorwork pattern was really not great. This is the first kind of small scale colorwork project that I tried, so I think, yeah, I could use some help. And then the bottom is like a totally different tension than the top. I don't know how I can put them side by side so you can see. But yeah, like these stitches are so much bigger than these original ones. So I know it's quite late in the game, but maybe I need to re-knit this. I don't know, maybe not. They can just be imperfect socks. I'm still gonna wear them, I'm still gonna love them, I think. So I'm not gonna unravel this one just yet. But what I did do, because I was talking about the double pointed needles, I really wanted to try knitting with a different style of needles, but not magic loop. So what I did is I got some of these 9-inch needles, really tiny 9-inch needles, so that I can try knitting them in the round without double pointed needles and without having to do magic loop. So we'll see how this goes. There is another pair of socks that I knit that I can't show you because they've been gifted, but I knit those at a DK weight with 9-inch needles, and it was a nice experience. I love not having to change needles like you do with double pointed needles. It's really, you get into a flow and you can just knit and knit and knit. So I really did like that about the 9-inch needles, circular needles, but I'm a little bit concerned that it's gonna hurt my hands. But I haven't gotten to using them on this pair of socks yet, so we'll see how that goes. Hopefully that will help my tension a little bit and just help the overall knitting experience. But yeah, so that's where I'm at with these forget-me-not socks. I really love these. I think they're really beautiful. And I got Stone Knits Colorwork Socks book to get this pattern, so I have a ton of sock patterns to work with now. I don't know which ones I'm gonna knit next, but I have lots of options. So yeah, those are those socks. And I think that concludes the sock section of this video. Those are all of the socks that I've been working on, I think. And then there is that DK weight sock that I knit. What was that? That was the Tin Can Knits Everyday sock pattern that I used for those DK weight socks. And I knit those for my grandfather and gave them to him for Christmas. So I don't have those to show you, but they were just knit in a navy blue yarn. I should tell you what yarn I used to knit my forget-me-not socks. So the yarn that I chose is the Sandnes Garn Sisu yarn. And this is 80% wool and 20% nylon. So again, not merino, trying to avoid the too soft and not well-wearing situation. So yeah, I have these three colors. The white is color 1012, the yellow is 2325, and the blue is 6324. And I really like these colors together. The yarn is wool, so it is a little bit more rustic, but it's still very soft. So yeah, I like that. And I'm just kind of starting to understand differences between yarns now that I've been knitting more socks. So I think this is a little bit on the thicker side for sock yarn, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just that it's a colorwork sock that makes it feel thicker, because you have so many different layers of yarn going on at the same time. This is definitely a very thick sock, but maybe that's, I don't know. It's actually so tough because I knit this because I got a pair of Birkenstock Bostons and thought it would be so fun to wear a pair of fun socks with those. And I thought this would be a really nice spring summer sock. But because it's colorwork and it's so thick because of all the different layers of yarn going on at once, they might be too warm to wear in the spring and summer. So, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, knitting a pair of wool socks in a spring summer pattern is kind of tough. But I still really love them. Okay, so now I think that's everything that I have to say about those socks. Okay, so next let me talk about this yarn. This is Drops Air in the color 3, Pearl Gray, and this is all I have left over of it right now. This yarn is so soft and amazing. It is a blown yarn, which is different than plied. It's got this polyamide chain thing that the fiber is blown into, so it doesn't need to be kind of twisted around itself to stay together. It's just very airy and fluffy and squishy and lovely, and not itchy because it's alpaca, which is really nice. But as I mentioned in a previous video, the knitting experience with this yarn is different, very different than other yarns I've used, and it does kind of feel sort of like sticky almost as you knit with it, or if you make a mistake and you need to pull out some stitches, they can really stick together. I don't know why that is exactly. Maybe it's just how kind of fluffy this yarn is. It has a lot of halo already, without needing to hold anything together with it, which is something that I really love about this yarn, but it also just, yeah, creates a different knitting experience. So anyway, I used this yarn to knit a few weekend headbands by Petite Knit. They've all been gifted. I think I knit 3 of them. So I don't have those to show you, but I really loved the way that they turned out. And I have very sensitive skin, and so I find wool to be quite itchy, especially if it's around my neck or if it were on my head, if it was a headband or a hat. And so the alpaca fiber is so lovely because it's not itchy at all. I don't find it itchy at all. So I'm kind of thinking, I mean, it's almost spring now, so I don't really need a headband, but I might knit myself one for the winter because I really loved those ones that I gift knit. Anyway, I have quite a bit of this yarn left over, and what I started doing with my leftover yarn actually is knitting scrunchies. So I've got one of them on my wrist right now. Here's another one that I knit. This is a self-drafted scrunchie pattern, and I love these so much. I think they're so fun and super cute, and I actually wear this every single day now. It's really interesting to see the two of them next to each other because this is the one that I've been wearing consistently, and this is the one that I knit and haven't worn. And the yarn really changes actually as you wear it. So it starts out very fluffy with lots of halo without needing a mohair, which is really nice. But then as you wear it, that halo kind of calms down a little bit and your stitches look a lot more defined, in my opinion. So anyway, I think knitting the scrunchies was a really fun way to experiment with this yarn and learn more about this yarn and the way that it behaves. So I'm really glad that I tried that. And having these scrunchies also helped me kind of understand how this yarn feels on my skin without having to knit a whole garment. So I wear this on my wrist, which is also a very kind of like sensitive area in terms of being able to tolerate itchiness. So like I said, I wear this scrunchie every day and I really don't find it itchy at all. So that helped me kind of determine that this Drops Air yarn is probably a really good yarn to knit things with for myself, because I find mohair really, really itchy and I find wool itchy as well. So with this yarn being so fluffy and already kind of having a bit of a halo, I thought that this yarn might be a good alternative for projects that I want to have a halo but where mohair is too itchy for me to use. So I bought a little bit more of this yarn because of my experience with it. I thought that I should maybe knit some more scrunchies or maybe another headband or something. And so while I was home for the holidays, I went to a yarn store that's local to my mom, and we found this yarn they had a bunch of colors, but this is the one that we ended up purchasing. So this is a little gift from my mom. We just got one ball so that I could knit some more scrunchies or a headband or something. And this is the color 30, I think, sage green. And I really like this color. I don't know if I think that it would look good on me, but my mom said that it would work with my hair color. So I got a ball of this just to, do some scrunchies or headbands or whatever with. And then after getting it, I started thinking, oh, you know what, maybe this would be a good yarn to use to knit the Cloud Sweater by Petite Knit, which I have seen and love. And I've seen it in green, and I was thinking, like a light green cloud sweater would probably be really nice. So instead of using this for scrunchies and headbands, I tried knitting a couple gauge swatches for the cloud sweater. I can't remember now what needles I used to knit each of these, but I ended up finding a fabric that worked for the pattern. It was probably this one that worked for the pattern, for the cloud sweater. And I only had one ball of this yarn, so I had to go buy some more at my local yarn store after I got home from the holidays. And so I bought 6 balls of this Drops Air in the sage green color. And what I realized after I brought it home is that there is quite a big difference between dye lots in this yarn, which I hadn't expected because I've gotten many different dye lots of this pearl gray color and they're always so similar that you can't tell the difference. This sage green was not the same story. When I got the 6 new balls of this yarn, they were definitely very different and had a lot more color variation than this one does. And so I kind of decided that I wouldn't use this original one for my sweater. But then I started worrying about the amount of yarn that I had, because I had purchased 6 balls of yarn with the intention of also using this one with them, because I didn't think the dye lot difference would be so much of an issue. And so I was kind of wondering, am I going to be able to knit this whole sweater with 6 balls instead of 7? And so I tried and it worked out. So here it is, my cloud sweater. It's so crazy that I got this done as quickly as I did. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks that it took me to knit this sweater, but that was knitting from the time I got home until the time I went to bed after work. So that was a lot. That was a lot of knitting, but yeah, I got it done pretty quickly. Here it is. This is the cloud sweater. I love this pattern so much. So it's knit top down, and you do some short row shaping for the shoulders and back, and then you pick up stitches and knit for the front part, and then you join in the round about here. Well, this is actually my favorite part about this pattern, are these kind of hem details. So at the bottom of the sweater, you do a few rows of 1x1 rib, and then you stockinette the rest of the bottom so that you end up with this really beautiful kind of like curling effect. So that's on the bottom as well as the sleeve cuffs. So I really love that design detail. I mean, the rolled over fabric thing is something that I really like. I don't know, like it could make it look unfinished, but I really love the way that it looks. So yeah, you have that rolled hem on the sleeve cuffs, the bottom, and then also on the neckline as well. I'm thinking about ripping out the neckline and knitting it again, just because, well, maybe not the whole thing, but just the top part, maybe in smaller needles, because the way that this neckline rolls over, it's really thick. I think just because of the needle size that I knit it at. So this bottom part is totally fine, but I think I might just re-knit the rolled part with the smaller needles, just so that it isn't quite so like ginormous. This looks just really like a really big roll to me, and I would like it to be a bit smaller. So I'm thinking about fixing that. This is the part that I thought was so crazy. So when I did the math for how much yarn I would need for this sweater, I think I needed 7 balls of yarn. And then with the whole, I had this one from Christmas, and then I came home and I thought, okay, well, I'll just get 6 more that I can add with this one. Once I realized I couldn't use this one because of the dye lot issue, I was wondering, okay, is it gonna work to knit this all with only 6 balls of yarn? And it did work by like such a small margin. This is literally all the yarn I have left. That's like, what, 3 or 4 feet of yarn? Not a lot. So it was kind of perfect, actually, the way this worked out. I do have a little bit more yarn, some ends that are kind of long, but this is by far the longest end. And so I'm very happy that this was like the perfect amount of yarn for this sweater. So I'm so excited about this. I have not worn it yet. I mean, obviously the ends have not been woven in yet, but I also was like really sick for almost 3 weeks, and I'm still just kind of getting over it. So I haven't really been out that much to be able to wear my sweater. So I'm excited now that I'm feeling a lot better to, be in the world again and be able to wear this. But before it's ready to wear, I do want to fix this neckline and then weave in all my ends. But yeah, this is where this sweater is at right now. I'm quite happy with it. My gauge did not match the pattern exactly, and so I did some math to figure out what I was going to do. My original plan was to knit the size extra small, but then my gauge was tighter than the pattern, so I knit a size up. I knit the size small instead of the extra small to compensate for my tight knitting, and it worked out well. I think this hasn't been blocked yet, so it will change a little bit with blocking. And what I'm hoping will happen is that this weird situation on the back will be fixed with blocking. I realized that the way the short rows were done on the back, and I don't know if this is what happens with everyone's sweaters or just mine, but I ended up with quite a lot of extra fabric around the back of the neck. So when I've tried this on, there's this little bump right by the neckline on the back, which I don't like. And I'm really hoping that it will block out, but we'll see. I don't know how I'm gonna fix that if it doesn't block out. I might just have to get used to it and live with it. And maybe having more weight on the bottom of the sweater will help with that. I'm not sure that I've really tried it on since finishing the whole bottom of the sweater, so maybe its own weight will help kind of even that out. The other thing I'm interested to see with blocking is how the sleeve lengths turn out. They are so perfect right now, but I think that this yarn is going to grow widthwise and shrink lengthwise. So I'm probably going to end up with a boxier, more cropped sweater, which isn't great because I love how it fits right now before blocking. So we'll see how the sleeve lengths turns out. And then also, I think I knit, how did I do that? The bottom, like the body of my sweater was quite cropped already before blocking. And because I know that it's probably gonna shrink with blocking, I decided to add a few more rows to the body. I think I probably added 8 additional rows. So I'm hoping that that will help keep it long enough so it doesn't get too cropped, because this sweater is already quite a bit more cropped than what I would usually wear. Yeah, we'll see how this turns out after blocking, but this is where it's at right now. Super excited about this one. Okay, I feel like we're kind of jumping around a little bit with this throughout this video, just because there are so many things to talk about and the order is definitely not chronological at this point. Let me talk a little bit about some more things that I knit for my partner. There are 2 more finished objects that I made for my partner, and one of them is this really cute little hat. This is the Gone Fishing Beanie by Critter Knitter, and I knit this in a few different yarns. 3 of them are Sirdar recycled yarns. That is the navy blue, this brown, and the green for the fish. And I really love these yarns. They're kind of tweedy. They have some variation in them, which I think is really nice. Yeah, the other one, this white, well, off-white, is Sandnes Garn Double Sunday. And I was supposed to knit this with 5 colors, but I modified the pattern to just have 4, and I like how it turned out. I think it's huge. If I put this on my head right now, it would look crazy because I have a very small head and my partner has a pretty big head, so we definitely can't share hats that are not adjustable. But what I did with this pattern is modified it, one, for the amount of colors that are used, but also just for the overall fit, because I think the original pattern is meant to fit with a lot more extra fabric at the top of the hat, so it's a little more slouchy, but I wanted to knit a really short, tight beanie. So I adjusted the chart to make it a little bit shorter, and I think I also adjusted the decreases at the top. I found a YouTube video about how to knit different hat decreases, and I went with this kind of subtle spiral top. I'm not sure if you can see that, but maybe if I go like this, you can see my decrease lines are kind of arranged so it looks like a spiral, but it's very subtle. I can't actually see that in my viewfinder, so. Oh, and the other thing that I adjusted was the brim. This is meant to be a double folded brim, but I modified it to be triple folded, and it looks really silly right now because it's not on a head, but because of this third fold, it sort of sticks out when I'm just holding it like this, but on a head it kind of flattens out a little bit more. And because I did a triple fold, it was kind of not that practical because you'd have to refold it every time, and to get it to fold to the right place was just kind of a challenge. So my partner asked me to kind of sew down the first fold. So this is actually 2 layers of knitted fabric that I have sewn onto the main part of the hat with just, I don't even know what I'd call that. I just kind of tried to match the V's of my knit stitches to secure this folded brim. And I think I might do that again with the brim and sew it down onto the main hat again, just to keep it all in place. Yeah, that's kind of the next step for this hat. But other than that, it is finished. I really like this. I've been really into really cute like animal color work charts, and especially fish color work charts. So I was really excited to knit this. My partner has been getting really into fishing, so it just kind of seemed fitting. Yeah, so I really like this one, and let me just grab the yarn so I can tell you what colors I used. Okay, so I just grabbed all my yarn balls, well, what I have left over of the yarn from this project. So these are the recycled yarns that I used, and this is the Sirdar Loveful 100% recycled tweed blend, and this is a DK weight yarn. So the 3 colors I used, the brown is shade 208 Bracken, the green is shade 204 Fern, and the blue doesn't have its label anymore, but this is shade 202 Pool. And I really liked the 3 of them together. And then I also, as I said, I added in this Sandnes Garn double Sunday to be the 4th color, to be the kind of light band, and this is shade 1015 Putty. So yeah, these are my 4 colors together. Sorry, this yarn ball is really ratty at this point, but yeah, so I actually have quite a bit of leftover yarn in the brown and green, and I have no idea what to do with them because this is a recycled tweed yarn, and it's so pretty. I really love all of these colors because of the tweed colors in them. Like there are little flecks of pink in the brown and in the green. I just love the color variations in these yarns, but they are a wool, what is it? It's 40% recycled wool, 40% recycled polyester, and 20% recycled acrylic, which is interesting because I've been trying to avoid acrylic and polyester and manufactured fiber types just for sustainability reasons. And so this one was interesting because it is recycled yarn, which feels somewhat sustainability minded, but it's hard when it's recycled artificial fibers. Anyway, I find this yarn a little bit itchy for me, so I could knit myself a hat with them, but I think that I might find them too itchy. So yeah, I'm looking for things to do with this yarn. So one pattern that I think I could try with this leftover yarn is the Ribka pouch by Rat and Seawitch. It's a really fun little pouch pattern, and you know, fish hat, fish pouch, they would go together. That would be kind of fun. I have no idea what I would use the pouch for, and really I should be knitting things that will serve a purpose and be used. But I'm just not sure what kind of garment I would knit with this yarn if I did knit a garment for myself or for someone else. So if you have any suggestions of patterns that I should try with this leftover yarn, I would love to hear your suggestions. I found the knitting experience with these yarns to be not necessarily my favorite. I would, like, my hands would just feel really grimy, not grimy. Yeah, grimy. My hands would feel really grimy really quickly after knitting on a project with this yarn for a little while. I don't know why that is. I would just like feel like I need to wash my hands quite quickly while using this yarn. And it's also quite a rough yarn compared to other ones that I've been working with recently. So it was just not super pleasant, but I really love the colors. They're so pretty. And I really do like the way that the hat turned out, and my partner really likes it. So, oh, the other thing is just the sizing. This is a little big, even for my partner with his big head. So I don't know why that is exactly. I actually knit one of these. There is another hat that is almost identical to this that I knit before knitting this one. And I was thinking about ripping it out and reusing the yarn, but I had so much yarn that I thought, why don't I just knit a second one? So that first hat, I tried putting in the dryer to shrink it. Well, okay, before putting it in the dryer, I tried just dunking it in some warm water. And then when that didn't work, I kind of got more and more aggressive with the methods I was using to try and shrink the hat. But as I already mentioned, this hat is knit with well, it's got 4 colors, but it's 2 different kinds of yarn. So I have, you know, the blue, the brown, and the green are all the same recycled tweed yarn, but this white, off-white band is, it's Double Sunday, which is a merino wool. It's 100% merino. So they shrink at different rates, which is a little bit of a problem. So I didn't want to shrink it too much. But anyway, that original hat that I knit, I gave to my cousin, who is a little child. And it was really funny because that hat was like way too big for an adult head. And so when I gave it to my cousin, it was really big on him. It like went over his entire head, but he loves fishing. And so I thought, you know, having a fish hat would be kind of fun. And I also thought, you know, like I could modify the hat in some way to make it fit him better. So I thought, you know, I could cut out an entire fish and sew a dart or graft this together to make it fit a bit better. But he said he loved it the way that it was, being way too big. So that's how we left it. Maybe someday I will make it smaller for him. I don't know. But it was just really funny seeing him with this giant hat on his head. And I'm happy that that hat now has a home, even though it's ginormous. So anyway, yes, that is the very long-winded full story behind this hat. Now I'm gonna move on to another finished object that I made for my partner. If you have seen my very first knitting update, I think it was my first one, you would have seen the balaclava that I knit for my partner, which was based on a World War II film that we had watched. The balaclava that I knit was very inspired by ones that we had seen in that film. And my partner is really into vintage clothing and especially kind of war era clothing. And so I was talking about knitting a scarf. And so he just started looking up World War II or maybe World War I era scarves and found one that he really liked. And so I thought, okay, why don't I try to knit it? And so I found some measurements. I decided to use some of the Cascade yarns ecological wool that I had left over from the double touffleur slippers that I had knit. So this is what's left over of that ecological wool yarns, and I'm really losing light right now, so this color does not read the way that it looks in real life on camera, but it's this really beautiful chocolate brown color. I did knit a pair of slippers that I felted with this yarn. This is the second ball that I purchased because I wanted to knit more slippers and maybe some other things. So this is what the yarn ball looks like after already having knit a scarf with it. So the Cascade yarns ecological wool balls or hanks are just massive. I did use the ball winder at my local yarn store to turn this into a centriple ball, and like I had to take it off and wind it by hand at a certain point because the ball just got so big that the ball winder couldn't handle it anymore. So it's just a ton of yarn. But anyway, so this is the yarn that I used, and this is the scarf that I knit. This is a scarf. It's a really super basic garter stitch scarf, and it's just a really big rectangle. I kept asking if he wanted something a little more interesting or less boring, because in my mind, garter stitch is the most basic stitch that you can knit with, and it just doesn't read to me like a really nice finished garment. But this is what he wanted, so this is what I knit, and it was actually so much fun to knit this because it was so mindless, and so I could just be watching a movie and knitting this and not having to think about it, which was actually really nice at the time that I knit this. That is exactly what I needed, so it was a really nice knitting experience overall, and I love this yarn. I love that it's undyed, and this is just the color that it is off the sheep. I think that's really fun. I don't know how to style this. It's such an interesting length. I just followed the dimensions of the World War II era scarf that my partner had found. But yeah, we're still working on finding ways to style this. I did at one point like wrap it around and tuck it in so that it kind of like was essentially a balaclava, which is quite cool. I think this is a very functional size for a scarf in the context of the war era, because it's very stretchy, so you can kind of turn it into a lot of different things, and you can kind of wrap it really tightly and pull it up over your mouth and nose to keep you warm. But yeah, anyway, I haven't seen my partner wear this out yet. It is a little itchy for me, but he can handle it. So anyway, yeah, this was just a fun little project that I knit when I was kind of in between things. It hasn't been blocked yet, so it might look a little bit different after it's been blocked. I didn't do a test gauge swatch or anything, so the dimensions of this might change with blocking, but I haven't blocked it. My partner hasn't needed it blocked, so we will see. I think he'll just wear it until it needs to be washed, and then that's when I'll block it, and we'll see how it turns out. But yeah, that is the, I guess, self-drafted scarf, but so basic, super basic. So I think anyone could knit this. This would probably be a really good pattern to begin with if you like this kind of scarf. Garter stitch, basic rectangle, easy peasy. I only have 2 more things to talk about, I think. Oh no, I lied. I have 3 more things to talk about. So the first one is just this little pattern that I started messing around with some old yarn that I have from when I used to crochet. So this is some leftover Loops and Threads Impeccable yarn, and I had so much of this when I was really into crocheting, because it was super cheap from the craft store and really soft, and I have it in a bunch of different colors. This is an acrylic yarn, which I now don't really want to purchase anymore, but I have a lot of it left over, and I feel really bad just having it sit there and buying new yarn without using that. So this, what I'm holding up right now, is something that I started knitting. This was one of the first things that I started knitting, I think, when I started really getting into knitting, but I never finished it, so it hasn't made its way into any of my videos. But I had seen these little knit wrap tops all over Pinterest, and I thought that I could just self-draft a pattern. Turns out I couldn't, because it is knit in stockinette and I didn't knit a border edge, so it just rolls in on itself, and it would be really hard to wear this as a shirt. So this was acting as my yarn ball. So I'm unraveling this and turning it into something else. And what I knit with it is this little bow tie scarf. And I really love this chocolate brown color, and it is really soft, which is nice, but this bow tie scarf is knit in garter stitch as well, which, as I just established with the garter stitch scarf, this isn't a stitch pattern that I really love. I don't know why, but it feels like a stitch that you knit when you're a beginner and you don't know how to do anything else. I don't mean that in a rude way. If you like garter stitch, like, amazing. It is, I can see the appeal, but it's just, for me, I don't love wearing garter stitch, I think. So I just knit this in garter stitch because I wanted to try this construction and see if I liked this as something like a little scarf to wear, because I've been seeing the Sophie scarf all over everything, and when I first saw the Sophie scarf, I thought, like, that's so weird. I don't understand the appeal at all. I would never wear a tiny scarf like that. But then it was winter and I put a knit sweater on and wanted to go out, but my neck was gonna be too cold to just wear the sweater, and so I felt like I had to wear my jacket that I could zip up to my chin. And I would love to just be able to wear a knit sweater out in the winter. So then I started to understand the appeal for a little tiny scarf that you can just, like, you know, tie on, because larger scarves I find to be just a little too much. I really like practical functional clothing, and a really big scarf can feel a little bit uncomfortable for me just because there's so much fabric going on and it just feels really bulky, and like I can just start to feel claustrophobic is definitely the wrong word, but like it overstimulated by the amount of fabric and like what's going on. So all that being said, I got the appeal of a small scarf and I started to really want a small scarf. And so I started exploring all the small scarf pattern options out there, and I found a bunch, and now I have a whole bundle in my Ravelry favorites that are all these little scarves and neckerchiefs and things like that. So I don't know if that's something that everyone can see on my Ravelry page, but if you are looking for small scarf neckerchief patterns, please feel free to check out my Ravelry. I think you'd be able to see it if you look at my favorites. I don't know, I haven't explored that yet. But anyway, yeah, I've been saving lots of things there. And this pattern, the bow tie scarf, is one of them. What I like about this bow tie scarf is that there's really only one way that you tie it. That is one thing about the Sophie scarf that I didn't love, because you have to like wrap it around a few times and tie it, and I feel like I would be too precious about it and I would want to tie it perfectly every time. I really struggle to wear bandanas or like other things like that, because I just will fixate over the way that the bows look, or the way that the tie looks. So I thought a scarf like this might actually be the perfect solution for me, because you don't have to tie the knot yourself. It just kind of like ties itself in a way. So I'll show you what I mean. This is not going to look nice with my current outfit, I don't think, but I'll put it on just, you know, so that I can show you the way that it works. So this is how the bow tie scarf fits. It does look odd with my current outfit, in my opinion, but I like how simple this is. You don't have to tie it. There is just a little slot that you put one side through, and that's it, and then it's tied, and I don't have to mess around with it at all. I have not woven in the ends because I don't know if I want to keep this one. I think I probably want to adjust this pattern. It does feel a little too big to me, just like these tie parts are really large, and I think I would like it if they were a little bit smaller, so I'm thinking about adjusting it. I was also thinking about trying to knit this in a different stitch pattern instead of garter stitch, maybe in stockinette, maybe something with eyelets. That could be really cute. I love eyelets and little details like that, so I think I would really like a version like that. But if I knit something in stockinette, I'm gonna need to do something to avoid this rolling in on itself issue. So I'd probably have to knit a border of some kind, and it's just going to take a little bit of I think experimentation and thought to figure out how I could adapt or adjust this pattern to create a garment or a piece that I really love and want to wear. I do like this one. This was a really great starting point, but I think there's probably a little bit more that I want to do in order to create a piece that I would really love to wear. Another thing I was thinking, and I actually saw another project on Ravelry where someone had knit some extra fabric for the neck part so that you could, instead of just having it go around your neck once and tying in the front, where you could wrap it multiple times and then have it kind of come together in the front, which I really love because there is this kind of like opening at the top where my neck is exposed, and I would love for this to really cover my neck completely. So I like that idea of knitting a little bit of extra length in that part that goes around your neck. So the construction of this is also super simple. You just start at one end, do some increases and then decreases to get this little this shape, and then you do some, I don't know if you'd call it double knitting or what, but to create this little opening that you would slot the other side through, and then in the middle is just a band. So I could add a little bit extra length to this band so it could wrap around my neck a few more times, and then I would have my neck completely covered because I'd have a layer of this long rectangle in the front of my neck as well as all the way around. My plan now is just to experiment a little bit more with this pattern, and I really like the idea of taking a vintage pattern and bringing it into the modern era and finding a way to knit it that really suits my current style. So yeah, I think my plan is to keep tweaking this pattern and finding a way to create something that I really love and want to wear all the time. So that is the bow tie scarf. Okay, so in one of my last videos, I think it was my most recent video, I was getting really excited about an Isager collection that was dropping that included the Johan Loop sweater, the Norma sweater, a bunch of other patterns by some really amazing pattern designers. And I did manage to purchase the yarn for that sweater, and so here it is. In my last video where I was talking about this Johan Loop sweater and the yarn, I mentioned that none of my local yarn stores carry Isager yarn, and so I was gonna order the yarn online from a shop that does carry Isager yarn. What I ended up doing is driving to this yarn store, did a little road trip, and managed to take a look at the Isager yarn in person before buying it. And this shop's website did not have the color that I wanted for the brown, but when I went in person, they did have that color available. I got a bunch of balls of Isager tweed yarn in 2 different colors. So this is walnut, which is a really interesting brown color. It's sort of a cool tone brown. It has sort of beige flecks and also kind of this like dusty blue as well. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that. Again, I'm so sorry, it's kind of getting dark, so it's really, the lighting is not ideal, but that's the walnut, which is the brown that I really wanted. And then I also have this as my contrast color, or my secondary color, and this one is, again, Isager tweed in the color oak. And I like the way that these look together, but I was kind of concerned that maybe they would be too similar to each other, that I wouldn't have the contrast that I needed to really make this pattern, or the colorwork pattern, pop for the Johan Loop sweater. In the original pattern, these are held together with a mohair, but I didn't want to knit this sweater with mohair because I did use mohair in one of my other projects, the Friday slipover, and I just found it to be way too itchy. So I thought maybe I should try something else instead of mohair, because I did still need to hold this yarn together with something just so I could meet gauge. So what I did is I purchased a different lace weight yarn to hold together with this. This is the yarn that I got to hold together with the Isager Tweed. This is Sandnes Garn Alpakka Følgetråd. Let me show you this to you. Alpakka Følgetråd, I think is how you'd say that. But I don't know. I think I mentioned in a previous video that I am on a journey to trying to learn Swedish. And so that is my best pronunciation with my current knowledge of Nordic languages. But Norwegian is different from Swedish, I know. Anyway, so this is what I got instead of mohair to hold together with my Isager Tweed. So let me try to hold them all up together. Oh gosh. Okay, let's do them one at a time. So this is the Isager Tweed in Oak, and this is the Sandnes Garn Alpakka in color 2650. They are not a perfect match, but I think that they have the same energy. They have the same vibe. So that is what I am gonna try. And then for the brown, this is the Isager Tweed Walnut, and this is the Sandnes Garn Alpakka in the color 3091. And these ones are less well matched than the oak because, as I mentioned before, the Isager Tweed brown is a very cool tone brown, which I love. And this alpaca from Sandnes Garn is not cool tone at all. This is like a very classic chocolate brown, and it does have these kind of reddish undertones. So not ideal, but I thought maybe they would swatch okay together. So I did knit a few gauge swatches. Well, actually, let me just, I don't know if this is interesting to see them all together, but I thought maybe it could work. And this is the only brown that I could find, I think. No, there might have been another brown, but I think the other brown that I could have used was a lighter brown, and the whole, what I was trying to do with getting these other lace weight yarns is to try and create a little bit more contrast between the two colors, because I was worried that the Isager yarns would be too low contrast. So with the alpaca, I was trying to kind of go to more extremes to create that contrast. But the color matching was not ideal. So let me show you the gauge swatches. This is just a swatch that I knit with the Isager Tweed Walnut and the Sandnes Garn Alpakka Brown, just to see what the browns look like together. And they definitely look mismatched like this, but once I got them knit up into a swatch, I think that the colors do kind of come together in a way that I don't mind at all. Well, in person, I think it looks okay. Now that I'm looking at it on camera, it does kind of look maybe not super well matched, but I think that it works. And so that was the swatch that I knit just with the browns. And then I also did a couple swatches in the colorwork chart. I love this colorwork chart so much. Is that not gorgeous? I think it's so beautiful. Actually, I should hold it this way. I love this colorwork chart, but I did not meet gauge and my tension was super off. This was my second colorwork project ever, I think, and my first ever colorwork project where I was knitting the colorwork flat, and I was really struggling with that and getting an even tension and meeting gauge. Maybe it's hard to tell, but when I look at this swatch, there's so much puckering, and yeah, it just was not working and I was not meeting gauge. And at the time when I was doing this, I was not comfortable with adjusting a pattern or choosing a different size to knit to make it work with a gauge that didn't match the original gauge from the pattern designer. So what I decided to do is put this project on hold and try some other colorwork projects and try maybe knitting a sweater or two more before this one, just so that I could work on my colorwork skills and get a little bit more comfortable with tweaking a pattern before finishing this. So yeah, this is as far as I got with this sweater, and I don't think I've worked on it since knitting this gauge swatch, but I do intend to come back to this at some point because this, I just love this so much. Like, this is so gorgeous. And I do want this sweater. And I think I'm getting there to the point where I'd be able to knit this and have it work, but just haven't quite gotten there yet. So anyway, yeah, my intention is to use the brown at the top and then fade into the lighter beige at the bottom. That is how I'd planned it originally, and so I bought yarn quantities that match that plan. But then after swatching, I was wondering, oh, should I actually do the beige at the top and then brown at the bottom? But I would have said in a previous video that I wear a lot of dark colored pants, and so I thought that it would make more sense, just, you know, outfit wise, to knit this with the dark at the top so that my sweater and pants don't blend into each other, so that it kind of like balances. But I don't know if that's what I'm gonna end up doing. So anyway, yeah, still just thinking about this one and how it's all gonna come together. And maybe I'll also show you the oak swatch. So this is with the Isager tweed in oak, and then with the held together with the Sandnes Garn alpaca in this beige. And I think that the swatches actually turned out really well. Here they are together. I do really like these colors together. And it's kind of unfortunate that the cool tone brown is being warmed up by the lace weight alpaca, but I don't mind it. I think it'll work. Thank you for bearing with me if you're still watching. I have one more thing to show you, and that is something I'm very excited about. I really splurged on some yarn for this project, so I've got it in this bowl. I bought 6 balls of Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino. This is the very first time that I have purchased Knitting for Olive yarn because it's not cheap, but it's so beautiful. So this is 70% organic cotton and 30% extra fine merino. I was really excited to splurge on this yarn because I think it's really pretty, and I've always wanted to try knitting something with Knitting for Olive yarn. So yeah, this is the cotton merino in the color Japanese Anemone, which is this really unique pink color. I'm not sure that it's picking up on camera, but this pink is really, I think it's a really unique pink shade because it almost has like a, I don't know, it's almost a cool tone pink, if that's possible. Can pink be cool tone? I'm not sure. Maybe it has like purple to it. I'm not really sure. I'm not that great with color theory, but I love this color. I really like this yarn. I'm not sure how it will look on me, but I hope that it turns out well because I love looking at the yarn. So my plans for this yarn, I am planning to knit the blouse number 1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and I've never knit a My Favorite Things Knitwear pattern, so I'm excited to try that, and excited to try that in a new yarn. The blouse number 1, it's kind of a boat neck long sleeve. So in the pattern, the recommended yarn is the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk. The Pure Silk is even more expensive than the Cotton Merino, and I just didn't feel like splurging that much for this project, so I went with the slightly more affordable Cotton Merino instead. And I am really excited to be knitting a garment with a cotton yarn. I have knit with cotton yarn before. I've knit quite a few little dishcloths with 100% cotton yarn, and I really love them. I like the idea of knitting with a plant fiber for something that I can wear. And it's mixed with merino, blended with merino, which I'm also very excited about because I love merino. It's so soft. Yeah, so I think a blend of cotton and merino is just a really interesting idea. So I was really curious to see how it would work up. So I have knit a few different gauge swatches for the blouse number 1. I started by knitting a swatch with the recommended needle size, which is 5 millimeters, and this is what I ended up with, holding the cotton merino double. This is definitely too loose of a fabric. It's very, like, okay, you can see through it if I'm stretching it quite a bit, but anyway, it turned out a bit too loose. And so I knit another swatch. I really went to extremes with this. I think this was maybe an accident, but I knit another swatch with 3.5 millimeter needles, and this is the fabric I ended up with, which I really love, but it is maybe a little bit too tight. It definitely was too tight when I measured it after blocking for the pattern that I want to knit. But there is another knitting pattern that I'm considering knitting with this yarn, or maybe with a pure silk, which is the Shell Tee by Wool and Beyond. I love that pattern, specifically the back of that pattern. I think the back is gorgeous. The front, not as sold on, especially at the gauge that the original pattern is knit at. I think that t-shirt would be gorgeous at this gauge, this kind of like really tight fabric. And if you're wondering where I got all of these ideas from, there is someone on Ravelry who did just that, and I think maybe even with this exact yarn, knit the Wool and Beyond Shell Tee with the Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino in Japanese Anemone at a really tight gauge. I don't know how she modified the pattern exactly, but it turned out so pretty, and I would love to have one of those myself. So I've kind of been going back and forth about whether I should knit the blouse number 1 with this yarn, or if I should save this Japanese Anemone for the Shell Tee. But I think I'm just gonna try knitting the blouse number 1 with this, and then if I really love it, then maybe I'll knit the Shell Tee with this as well, or maybe I'll knit it with a different color depending on how things go. So anyway, all that being said, I finally got a gauge swatch that I have decided to go with. I knit this at a 4 millimeter needle size, and I really like the way that this fabric turned out. It is a little bit looser, obviously, than the one that I just showed you at the 3.5 millimeter needle size, but I think it's still tight enough that it looks neat and even, and so I think this is what I will go with for my blouse number 1. I haven't actually purchased that pattern yet. I've just been doing all of this testing beforehand because I was kind of thinking that maybe I would knit the Shell Tee instead, so I was just gonna wait until I really kind of felt like I knew what I wanted to do before I bought a pattern. So yeah, I think I will be purchasing the blouse number 1 pattern now that I have my fabric that I like, and I am about to go on a little trip to see my family. So I was thinking that the blouse number 1 might be a good travel project because it'll just be stuck in it, which is easy for being around people and having a conversation while you knit, whereas something like my forget-me-not socks take a little bit more brain capacity, and maybe I would not be so keen to be knitting this while also being social. Although this would be a really great small size to bring with me. I haven't actually decided what I'm going to bring with me on my trip yet, but I'm thinking maybe the blouse number 1. I think those are all of the updates that I have for you today. This might be my longest video ever. We'll see how it goes when I edit it down. Thank you for hanging out with me if you're still here. And actually also I realized that I never shared what I'm wearing. For anyone who is curious, this cardigan that I'm wearing, I unfortunately do not have a pattern for because I did not knit it myself. my mom actually knit this cardigan. And I think that it's such a sweet story because my mom knit this cardigan when she was in high school. She was 16 or 17 years old when she made this. It's just a, well, I don't even know if I'd call it basic. I haven't knit a cardigan yet, so I don't know what cardigan knitting patterns are like. But it's this navy blue wool with these fun wooden buttons. I think it's a raglan construction. My mom loves a raglan construction. I don't know if my mom has knit any drop shoulder construction pieces, but she likes a raglan. And it's got a 1x1 rib cuff, and it also has these little pockets, which I can't say I've used. They're very short. They're probably only like 5 centimeters deep. I don't know if you can see that, but they're super cute. And I just love that my mom made this when she was a teenager, and now I have it and can wear it. And I think that's the beauty of wool pieces, is that they really do hold up and last. This is, you know, pilling and it could use some love, but it just feels really special to be able to wear this. And I've styled it just with the top button done up, which I've been seeing quite a bit. I think it's kind of trendy right now. And I find it really comfortable, and I really like wearing my cardigans this way. And I've styled it with this Wilfred top that I got at a consignment store. That is what I'm wearing, which I feel like people normally talk about at the start of the video, but I did forget, so just got it later. Thank you so much for sticking around and listening to me ramble about all of my knitting. I definitely had a lot of things to talk about because it's been so long since I made a video. So I hope that you enjoyed my updates today. And I have no idea when I'm going to film another video, but I've been getting into the idea of sewing, and I've purchased some fabric, and I have a sewing machine that I got secondhand, and so I'm going to maybe start a sewing journey. I figured that I would keep the sewing and knitting separate because I know not everyone does both crafts, and so it might make sense to talk about those things separately. So I might at some point make a sewing video to let you guys know what I am working on and how sewing projects are going. But yeah, that'll probably be a separate video to this one. I probably won't put the two of them together in one. So if you're interested in seeing my sewing projects, please feel free to subscribe to my channel so that you are up to date on my projects and how things are going. And also feel free to subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more knitting update videos in the future as well. If you would like to stay updated with my projects in general, you can follow my Instagram, which is Heather's Journal. You can also have a look at my Ravelry page. I have all of my knitting projects up there with the specific yarns that I used and needle sizes and everything like that. So if you are curious about any of the projects I talked about today or things that I've knit in the past, you can find all that information on my Ravelry, which is Heather's Journal. I think that wraps up our video for today. This was such a long video, but I really had a lot of fun talking about all of my recent knitting projects. I hope you enjoyed hearing about them. So I'm gonna end it here. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that your projects are going well, whatever it is you're working on, and I hope that you have a lovely rest of your week. Take care. Bye.